Welcome to this very special edition of Indianomics. Special because I have with me one of my favorite economists and guests. I have with me Dr. Kaushik Basu, former Chief Economic Advisor of the Government of India and Chief Economist at the World Bank too. Dr. Basu, I can't tell you what a pleasure this is for CNBC TV 18 and for me to host you.
Lata, it's a pleasure for me to be talking to you again.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Well, let me start with one of the things which, you have seen from both sides, the ease of doing business. You were in India ensuring that there is, better atmosphere to do business. And from the World Bank's point of view as well, you have seen the process. Now, India jumped 30 paces. You tell us, how real was this achievement?
First of all, doing business the way it is calculated, since I got to see the other side of the actual computation when I moved to the World Bank, it's done very professionally. Okay. But the measure is corrected every now and then, like even GDP calculation. You know that something is not being done right, so you make corrections. Usually the way it is done is you do it completely blind, without knowing which country will be affected how, and you make corrections. Having said that, India has indeed improved. Not quite as much as appeared straight away in terms of numbers. Part of that is India's own move. Part of that is changing measures of the World Bank. Okay. So the 30 places that India moved, part of that was because India had made improvements. Part of that is because World Bank had changed certain ways of calculations which went in the favor of India. So it's a combination. Okay. Having said that, even before I went to the World Bank, when I was in the Indian government, I would always stress that this is an indicator worth watching, yes. And India should try to do better on that, because Indian bureaucratic processes are so slow and cumbersome, it slows down the economy. So I have to say, on that score, it is good to see India moving in the correct direction.
Okay. Can you tell us what percentage was because of India and what percentage was because the index itself changed?
Of the 30, more than half the movement was changes in what the World Bank had done. Okay. Less than half was because of India's move. So I don't know the exact, I won't put down my word for it because I was not at the World Bank then. Okay. But I do know that India went a substantial way in that, but more than half was because of changes in the criteria.
Yeah, we know. We keep changing the Sensex ingredients as well. So we know a lot of indexes.
Yes, excepting again, I want to point out that this is done really just to improve the measure and with no country in mind. At least that's the way the World Bank would do when I was there.
Okay. All right. Well, let me come straight away to one measure where India improved, and that was in the enforcement of contract, and that was because we passed the Bankruptcy Act. Now, at that point, I want to bring to our viewers this book that is just going to be released, Dr. Basu's book, The Republic of Beliefs, where he looks at the relation between law and economics. Now, Dr. Basu, this bankruptcy code, which has given us this big jump in ease of doing business, do you think it will succeed? Because its previous avatars, the Sarfacy Act in 2003 and the DRT Act, Debt Recovery Tribunal Act in 1993, didn't meet with much success.
Yeah. India has had a bit of a record of trying to do things and not managing. But this is of recent policies. I believe actually this is one of the best moves that the government of India has done, the bankruptcy code. I don't know the details of it, but from the little bit I've seen, and I feel the intentions are right. One measure, doing business is a variety of measures. One particular measure on which India does atrociously is how long it takes to close a business. Okay. In India, it's just awful. I mean, to go through the bankruptcy procedures, it's much worse than other countries. And we do know that people are sensible enough. If you know that you can't get out of a business once you've got in, you'll hesitate to go in the first place. So very important part of the doing business. And I was glad when India took this measure. And I had spoken to some people in government, and the way it was being done was right, to sort of ease up, make it easier. Yes, you'll have to take some losses, but have some rules. Who takes how much losses? The borrower, the lender, the equity holder, and have clean rules so that you can exit quick. So I think this is a good move, and the benefits of this will be more in the long run. But we have a capacity to botch things up. So there will be fine-tuning, there'll be amendments, but we have to keep in mind that India takes too long to allow companies to exit. We have to shorten that.
Okay. We've seen a couple of years of the bankruptcy acts working. Until now, we have two marquee cases to boast
Yeah.
of. Bhushan Steel and Electro Steel have been sold off, and money has actually, checks have been written to banks by the new owners. Are you, are you sufficiently satisfied from your perch
Yeah.
that we will move up further in the ease of doing business because of the bankruptcy?
I would think so. Because of this, and because the space for improvement is huge because we did very badly.
They're so bad, yeah.
Yes, I would expect India to move up more on that. But one thing, Lata, I should tell you straight away. A country is 1,000 different things happening in business. Doing business measures 10 different indicators. We must not get into the ditch of just gaming this system.
Okay.
Some countries have done that. You work on exactly the 10 measures that the World Bank is doing, but what you have to do is take it in the spirit that the aim of this is to ease up bureaucratic procedures, and measures have been taken on this, and I hope that that will be the spirit.
I was actually, that was going to be my next question. These measures within India only look at Mumbai and Delhi, whereas businesses, ease of doing business is much more than that. So how honest or how indicative
Yes.
is this of actual ease of doing business?
It's honest, but the indicative is a question, but let me explain. There are just 11 countries where 2 cities are used.
Oh.
For the rest of the world, for smaller countries, it's 1 city. Having said that, I will say something in favor of doing business. In doing business, 70% is what is the case du jure
Okay.
or in the law books.
Okay.
That you can sit in any city and do grilling and find out what's in the law books. The practice of how it actually works out, that you need to collect from many places, that is actually just 30% of the measure. There you are losing out just by doing it Bombay, Delhi, but it's only a part of the measure that is losing out by that.
Okay, fine. So we can take it as a broad measure, but
Yeah.
we shouldn't be too complacent
That was my point. Just don't game that indicator. India is a big country with many things to do.
Okay, but I'm going to revisit, I have not read this book, Republic of Beliefs, again, but I've read about the book. And it, as I said before, measures the connection between law and economics.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that has changed lately is the Prevention of Corruption Act has been amended about a couple of weeks back. And one of the things it says is that both the bribe giver and the bribe taker will be culpable and can be brought to book. Is India moving in the right pace, right direction?
I don't think so really on this measure. My own view was that this is something that I had aired when I was in government. It was never really taken on board, is to actually, in cases where the bribe giver is being forced to give a bribe, is being harassed. It's a harassment bribe. There should be no punishment for the bribe giver. Point is, giving the bribe giver 7 days or a very short window to come out with, most people will be scared.
Yes.
If that window goes, or if after that I don't manage to prove myself innocent, I'll be doubly guilty because I am guilty. So it should be asymmetric punishment, done very carefully. And there are examples in other countries now. We know that China has used certain kinds of asymmetric punishments.
Okay.
There are Scandinavian countries which have done it. And I do continue, and in this book I do talk at length about what my ideas were if we really want to cut down bribery type corruption. Corruption has many faces. My book addresses only one aspect of
Okay.
it.
I hope we are able to tweak this law. But is there any specific immediate advice that comes to the mind so as to tweak this law so that the bribe giver is punished but asymmetrically?
Yes. According to this law, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, which is now being amended, the giver and the taker are equally punishable. There are some clauses where the giver is exempt, but the clause is not really used. My point is it should be a very, very explicitly made case, not just a 7-day window. When I'm being asked to pay a bribe for something that I'm legitimately the government is supposed to give to me, I should be completely exempt. And it is not a question of we are giving you a short window, stand up and say it boldly, and then if you don't manage to prove, we'll put you in jail. No one's going to stand up. It should be a much clearer exemption. And if you do that, the bureaucrat who asks for that bribe will be much more scared and it'll go down, is my belief. There is actually, by a group of Indian and Australian economists, there are laboratory experiments done with this idea, done in Hyderabad, which shows that actually it probably works in laboratory conditions at least.
All right, but then that's still very good advice, that, and one hopes that these clauses in the Prevention of Corruption Act will be amended. But, you know, since we're into this behavioral, and you are the expert on the issue of the connection between law and economics, do you think the Prevention of Corruption Act has been sufficiently amended to make bankers take action? I mean, the previous avatar of the law actually brought all bankers into the realm of being charge-sheeted, and many of them have been charge-sheeted simply because the decision taken 10 years ago, on hindsight, the law has gone bad. And therefore, you have caused damage to public money, you can be charge-sheeted. Now the law says, no, you should have benefited by taking that wrong decision. You should have disproportionate assets. Only then you are charge-sheeted. Right. Do you think it has been sufficiently corrected and bankers will start taking decisions now?
Lata, I wish I followed this closely enough. My impression, this is from reading newspapers and people like you, is that this part is a move in the right direction. And I'm also told that banks are now beginning to provide for their own officers some backup so that you don't get unfairly caught in this, which is going to actually make you more cautious and can do harm in the long run, just like we have seen in the case of the bureaucracy.
Yes.
If you are going to catch people unfairly, one way bureaucrats can handle the problem is not take decisions.
This covers bureaucrats also.
Yeah,
this
covers bureaucrats
that
also.
disproportionate assets have to be
That's
proved.
right. Otherwise, you don't take decisions. One way, as a bureaucrat, you can play safe is just don't take decisions. It slows things down. So correction of that is a worthwhile thing to do.
Okay, fine. Well, with that, you know, my questions on now shift to the growth issue. I was going through your tweets, and you have this very interesting graph where you point out that growth in India has broadly been rising. You know, up until 1970s, you know, 61 to 73, we were 3.5%, the Hindu rate of growth. Right. From 73 to 83, we come to 5%. From around 85 to 95, we go up to, you know, 6.5% to 6%. And thereafter, we come to 8.5%, right. 2003 to 2010. Yeah. And then we have come down to, again, 6.7 or 6.5%. Do you think that this is a big fall? After all, that 2003 to 2011 period, we were beneficiaries of global growth. So would you be really unhappy about this come down? Or do you think this is just returning to normalcy?
No, I hope not, because the 2003 to 2011, when India was growing close to 8.5%, was really quite a remarkable year. And it's not a short stretch. It's 8 years of phenomenal growth. There were little ups and downs. There were years with over 9.5%. 1 year was bad within that, 2008, when the Lehman crisis broke. But it was a very good performance. My own expectation was it would drop a little bit from there because it was extraordinary performance, but we would be roughly there. We would be close to 8%, if not 8.5%. So the drop does disappoint me. The drop from 2011 to now is unfortunate. India need not have dropped down this low. 2-3 things are behind it which we should pay attention to. One is I do believe that the demonetization slowed India's growth down. Hopefully that is behind us. We will pick up now. But also another measure which we economists watch, but somehow it's not popular, savings and investment. The fraction of GDP that is being saved and invested, that has been going down. Over the last 5-6 years, the savings rate is just below 30%, which is not bad, but India had gone up to 35-36%. We have to pay attention to that. One more reason I worry about the growth dropping is all piecemeal evidence, and we don't have hard evidence, is that it's hitting the bottom segment more than the wealthier segment. There's the informal sector, there's a lot of joblessness. So the growth has come down, but that in itself I would have expected some drop. It's dropped a bit more than that, and it's hitting the bottom segment more than it should have.
Okay, the conversation is definitely is warming up. We are discussing why India has slowed, and Dr. Basu thinks that while we could have slowed a wee bit from those big, bright years of 2003 to 2011, we have slowed more than we should have. A very interesting turn in the conversation. We have to take a break. We are coming back with more questions on this issue. Why has India slowed? Back in a minute.